Good morning, everyone. Happy first day of March. Welcome to our membership check-in for March 2023. Can you believe it? We are, if you notice my little spring sign here, we are 19 days away from spring. And I also know that it's spring because I have two birds that have decided to perch right outside my bedroom window. And so at 5:30 this morning, they greeted me and awakened me to a joyful day. So I hope that if you have any neighbor visitors of birds, that they do not wake you that early, but it is a sign that good things are to come and that spring is certainly on the way. So you can start by saying hello in the chat if you'd like. I'm happy to see everybody. And again, welcome to our check-in for this month. I wanted just to start by taking a minute. If we have any new members that are joining us for the first time as you come on in, you can certainly say hello in the chat, but do we have any new members that are attending for the first time? And if so, would you like to unmute and introduce yourselves? And we may not have any this month, and that is just fine. So again, welcome to our check-in for the month. I always like to start with kind of a reflection, because I think this is a good space for us and all of our different capacities to think about the roles that we have. And this video talks about trust in the workplace versus performance in the workplace, the intersectionality of those two things, but also the distinct differences that those two qualities have and really kind of why they should be distinctly different. So I'm going to switch over here. And as I start playing the video, if you can just confirm in the chat that the audio is working. So we'll go ahead and watch Trust versus Performance.
Plus, I just think this is really interesting. So I've worked with the Navy SEALs, and I asked them, like, how do you pick like the guys that go on SEAL Team 6, right? Because they're the best, the best, the best, the best. And they drew a graph for me, and on one side they wrote the word performance, and on the other side they wrote the word trust. The way they define the terms is performance on the battlefield and performance off the battlefield. So this is your skills. This is, did you make your quarterly earnings, whatever, however you want to translate it, right? Performance, it's traditional. This is, how are you off the battlefield? What kind of person are you? The way they put it is, I may trust you with my life, but do I trust you with my money and my wife? They're SEALs. This is what they told me. Nobody wants this person, the low performer of low trust, of course. Of course, everybody wants this person, the high performer of high trust, of course. What they learned is that this person, the high performer of low trust, is a toxic leader and a toxic team member. And they would rather have a medium performer of high trust, sometimes even a low performer of high trust, it's a relative scale, over this person. This is the highest performing organization on the planet, and this person is more important than this person. And the problem in business is we have lopsided metrics. We have 1,000,001 metrics to measure someone's performance and negligible to no metrics to measure someone's trustworthiness. And so what we end up doing is promoting or bonusing toxicity in our businesses, which is bad for the long game because it eventually destroys the whole organization. The irony is it's unbelievably easy to find these people. Go to any team and say, who's the asshole? And they will all point to the same person. Equally, if you go to any team and say, who do you trust more than anybody else? Who's always got your back? And when the chips are down, they will be there with you. They will also all point to the same person. It's the best gifted natural leader who's creating an environment for everybody else to succeed, and they may not be your most individual highest performer. But that person, you better keep them on your team.
So I like that video. I apologize that I should have given you a little warning about the language use in it, but I like that. And are we building a community that's founded on performance, or the one that's on our shared trust? And I like to think, especially at MACAE within the association, that we're building that community of trust, of camaraderie, of professionalism, collegiality among each other, friendship in many cases, as we work so intimately and closely together with many of you across the state. And so we just have to recognize our place within that space. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Patrick, can you get him for our next speaker for the next conference?
I actually
Fabulous.
emailed him to see. So we'll see. I'm not sure. He's pretty famous, so we'll see.
That'd be
Do our
great.
best.
Thanks.
He's got a lot of great videos like that are just kind of good food for thought.
What's his name?
Simon Sinek, SIN as in Nancy, EK.
Thank you.
Yeah. So hopefully you are all, building communities built on trust and not totally reliant on just the performance metrics and outcomes, because that's really not why none of us really got into this business of education for that. The other thing I wanted to start with is opening up a conversation for sharing of good news. And I would just like to highlight the work of St. Vincent and Sarah Fisher Center in Michigan, in Detroit, excuse me. Of course, we're all from Michigan here. In Detroit, they were awarded the National Award from the Coalition on Adult Basic Education for 2023 in advancing workforce development. And I know Diane was, I think, going to be on this morning. If she'd like to say anything, or anyone else from St. Vincent and Sarah Fisher, they're more than welcome to. But I just wanted to congratulate them on their hard work of their adult education program, working in collaboration with local workforce development entities and really moving the needle in the Detroit community that they're in to really meet the needs of learners. And so we're in conversation and discussion about how to best spotlight this work, but really wanted to recognize them. They'll receive that national award in person at the COABE conference the first week of April. So we're very excited for them and wanted to say congratulations to our fellow colleagues who are national award winners in this space. So I don't know if Diane or anyone from St. Vincent and Sarah Fisher wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks so much, Patrick. I really appreciate you acknowledging this. This is something that we're pretty excited about, but we're excited not only, and as I had said to Patrick privately, I'm incredibly proud of our team. A lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, and caring and passion about the mission has gone into this. They've really earned it, but I'm equally as excited that on a national level, somebody from Michigan has been recognized, and all of the amazing efforts of this group that are going into adult education and workforce development, and it lifts all boats. So I see it as an award for us, but an acknowledgement for the entire sector, for the state, and especially all of the MACAE partners. And Patrick, again, thank you for the shout out. I really appreciate it.
Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
Are there other providers, programs that'd like to share any good news or any updates from your programs at this time? You're welcome to post in the chat, or you can unmute and share those out.
I will share that we have an invite from Representative Sharon McDonald that she will be at our luncheon next week. So we have at least one legislator we know will be there.
Wonderful to hear. Thank you, Tammy. Anyone else?
I just had contact with a former student. It took her 7 years to get through our program for a credit and a half because of alcohol and drug addiction. And she called yesterday to say, I'm officially an employee of Belding Schools as a parapro. And she's gone through some really hard times and didn't fall back on alcohol to get through it. And she was just so excited because Ann Van Duzen and I share a staff member. And so she is now on the same roles as Brownie, who was a teacher of hers. And she just she couldn't hardly speak. She had to talk to me on her way in to school for her acceptance and to get her picture for her ID. And it's only one, but just to hear that excitement almost brings me to tears. It's just so exciting.
Absolutely. That's awesome. What a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that, Cindy. That's so touching, and just as a good reminder for the beginning of the month about we are making inroads. Sometimes it seems like we pour a lot out and a lot into others. And when you get those stories in return, and there's so many stories that are left unshared, right? I mean, sometimes we don't hear how those stories end. That's just wonderful that her journey's just starting, and now she's giving back in her own way too. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Any other? Anyone else have any? Oh yeah, go ahead.
I
Go ahead,
have
Brenda.
one that just happened yesterday, and it's very different. It's a good story, but anyway, I'll tell it to you. So we had a student come to us just a couple of weeks ago, and he applied for a job at Howmet over here, but he knew he needed his GED or high school diploma, and he decided to get his GED. And so in the meantime, he had an interview with Howmet, and he couldn't lie about not having his GED. And here's the amazing thing. He was kicked out of school in 9th grade. So basically he didn't finish high school. The guy was incredibly smart, scored very high on his GED test. And he finished yesterday with his last 2 tests, and he was so excited. He tried to give me $100 bill yesterday for helping him out. And I just went, what? No, I can't take that. No, I told him, I said, we do this out of the passion and love for this. But I've never had that kind of reaction before. So, but he was an amazing person.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that, Brenda. That's
Brenda, can you send him over here? I'll take it.
Absolutely, Mike.
Yeah, if you're ever feeling down, Brenda, you can and you're ever feeling like, I'm just not worth anything, you can say, at least I'm worth $100.
Exactly.
Any other
have-
good news? Yeah,
I have
go ahead.
one. I had a student enroll a couple of weeks ago, and during his intake process, he explained to me that he wanted to become an EMT, that he wanted to help save lives, but he realized that he was kind of in a dead-end job. But in order to start this next phase of his life, he needed his GED, but his deadline was March 1st. So I had like 2 weeks time to get all of the requirements for our program met and him tested. And we made the goal. He took all 3 tests on Monday and passed and got his certification. So
That's
that was very
wonderful.
exciting.
That's awesome, Melissa. Thank you for sharing
you.
that. Any other updates or good news to share? I would be remiss. I think Brian Puffer is on. Brian, did you want to share anything about your event coming up?
Sure. We have our Sling Craft Show coming up, and actually 17 days coming up here. So it'll be on March 18th. It's a pretty large show. We have 2 shows a year. This one we get about 4,000 to 5,000 people at. It's a large fundraiser for all of our school groups and whatnot. If you ever been to it, it can be a pretty busy show, but I know in the past I've put it out there. If anybody's interested in free tickets or VIP passes to the show that gets you in an hour before, please let me know. I'll put my email in the chat, and just send me an email, and I'll contact you that way. Make sure I get those to you. So we're looking forward to that, and hopefully the weather cooperates, since it's been a little crazy the last week or so. But yeah, we're excited.
Thank you, Brian. I will be planning to be there and buy lots of trinkets and gifts for upcoming holidays and other things like that. So that's where I do most of my shopping. Thank you. Any other updates that anyone would like to share? Going once, going twice.
Oh, Patrick, okay, I'll mention something.
Yeah.
We've got appointments with 3 legislators for Legislative Day.
I saw that.
Yeah, Nancy DeBoer is on the Appropriations Committee, and got Representative Bradley Slog, He's on the Joint Capital Outlay and the Subcommittee on Military and Veterans Affairs and the State Police and Corrections. So for jail programs and stuff, we get a good plug for that. And Senator Roger Victory, he's been in our program before and visited. I think he was here when you were here and you met him. He's on the advisory board for our Caroline Tech Center. So we have some really good tie-ins with that. And Christina, who's the program coordinator, she's also a veteran. So she and Slag will have a lot to talk about too. So some good connections there for next week.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Michael. That's
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work to follow up and schedule those. So thank you for going the extra mile to do that.
Thank you. I wish we had more time. I'd get more of them.
I know. Your body was putting that she had folks as well. So
Yeah, great.
well, thank you all for sharing. This is one of the highlights for me when we are all gather and able to share these things. And just really important that we're telling these stories and sharing the good news that we have. You know, we're in a good place. And we've got to remember those highlights and those moments. So remember these things when I ask for stories in the next newsletter, because oftentimes I know it's difficult sometimes to get a picture or write a little blurb. But these are things that I write down. I know I remember. And so if I ask for a little space of your time to send me a little something, please, please, please do, so that we can document these things, because they tell the history of our association, but they also tell the broader story of the work that we do, that all of us are a part of. So thank you for that. And I would also be remiss if I didn't just acknowledge if anyone is still suffering with power outages or knows or has families or works with anyone or has any clients or participants, learners that are suffering. We extend, our thoughts, because it's very real. I know in my old stomping grounds where my parents lived, they were out of power for about 5 days. And so hunkered down, and with the ice and the snow and the sleet and everything, it's been a little bit challenging. But the sun did come out yesterday in Lansing. It's been dark and gloomy for about 2 weeks, and the sun finally came out yesterday for a little bit. So we're getting there. Like I said, we're getting there till spring.
One thing, excuse me, to add to that is to think about the school employees. My husband's in right now trying to make sure the pipes don't freeze in the elementary building, because that's his
Absolutely.
responsibility as operations director. So yeah, all those people we don't see at school that will make
Absolutely.
it so we can go back.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Cindy. My dad is a HVAC technician and has been his whole life, done plumbing and HVAC. So right around the holidays, when it was extremely bitterly cold and we had, the major snowstorm, that was ended up not being as bad, but was still pretty bad. But the bitterly temperatures, I mean, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, he had, calls and it's going out. So yes, thank you for sharing that up. It's also important for us to mark Women's History Month begins this month on March 1st. I was just looking at Google actually, and usually on the homepage, they have kind of like information or a link, and they don't this year. So I'm wondering if they are not electing to do something, but International Women's Day is actually a week from today on March 8th. So they may be saving up for that. But I've included a link here to some national events that are happening through the Library of Congress. And I'll just click over to that page really quickly. But really a series of events, a lot of them are virtually or in person. There are obviously some in-person events hosted at the Library of Congress in DC, but there's some online and virtual opportunities, including one on leadership in tech and investment. There's more if you kind of click on the additional events calendar. And I just think that it's a good space to be a part of and listen at the national landscape about arts and humanities, and honor and recognize leadership of women and during this month, and draw recognition to firsts that have happened throughout our history, and just to really acknowledge the work that we still have yet to do. It was only about 100 years ago, a few years ago, that the right to vote was granted to women, and then obviously even less amount of time that it was granted to women of color. So we're still in a position where we have a long way to go for equality and building true equity But I think that the work that we all do and how we deliver our services and to whom we deliver our services is a part of that effort of building equality and better equity across our country in education and workforce and in other spaces. So however you celebrate, I say congratulations to all women. You are really, truly awesome. And so we thank you for your contributions to MACAE. MACAE has a proud history of female leaders, presidents of the association, board members that have contributed much. And so we thank you and honor you over the next month. A month is certainly not enough time to highlight it all, but it's definitely a good kickstart to honoring and recognizing the contributions of women. So I hope you'll take a look at that website. They've got a lot of cool resources and things on there that you might want to share out or just hold on for yourself. Talking about one phenomenal woman that I think colleague and friend Karen Govan, she's running for COABE, our Regional 3 representative, which is the Midwest. I think it's 8 states, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, obviously, Indiana, Illinois. So if you have not had a chance yet and would like to extend a vote, you can do so. I've included the link again from COABE for that. The election runs through, I believe, April 3rd, but don't delay. Vote today, and you can go and extend that vote in support. It'd be great to have some Michigan representation for our regional COABE representative. So we'll promote that up. Moving into some of our more specific updates. One is a reminder for some of our before and after school community education programs that may have applied for the 21st Century Learning Grant opportunity through the Department of Education. That application is due on March 28th. So we're in the month of March. It's hard to believe. It seems like, oh, I've got time March and April, but now we are in March. And so the deadline is fastly approaching. And then also I wanted to share out a memo surrounding Great Start Readiness. There is an expansive effort underway to expand 4-year learning, 4-year preschool, essentially Great Start Readiness to all 4-year-olds in the state. It's been included in the governor's budget. It was included in her State of the State address. The legislature has moved to push funding into that space and to support that expansion. And yet there's some delays in that process. One being families are not signing up for Great Start Readiness programming or not understanding their eligibility. I should note that with this expansion, it actually lowered the threshold for eligibility. And so more people are now eligible based on their income. And then second, there's not enough quality or qualified childcare employees. And that's something that all of us can relate to in terms of trying to find candidates for any position at this point. But whatever we can do to raise that space up, especially with the families that we're all working in, to let them know about these opportunities. I've included a link there to resources that you could print out and then share with families directly. Or even if you know of spaces where the program within your local school district or community entity, part of the expansion is that actual physical locations will be expanded, and that those locations will be targeting some of the most marginalized populations, rural areas, low income areas, or historically high poverty areas, historically Black and Brown communities. And so those are the spaces in which this investment will most readily target. So I just think it's important that we have that on our radar. I know not all of us work directly in that landscape, but we definitely touch the families that may be eligible for those resources. And there is, as of yet, not a statewide campaign to really advertise that. And so right now it's kind of word of mouth for that expansion. So those would be important things to share out with the families that you all are working with. Any questions about those resources? All right. Several resources I wanted to share in regards to alternative education or youth populations. recently Ed Reports, which is a national research entity foundation, they released a new kind of guideline or materials for culturally responsive practices in terms of evaluating curriculum and culturally relevant education. It's a dense report, as it should be, but that may be something that you want to look at and to, kind of take in. I know that those conversations are sometimes important to have with staff members, and to every year as we come to the end of a year or start a new program year, it's kind of interesting to evaluate what resources are we drawing from and what resources are we being responsive to in response to those learners or those families that we're engaging with. There's a couple of links when I was looking at it, really kind of high level, for interesting articles, things to think about, kind of things that maybe you want to share with staff or colleagues. So I would encourage anyone to really look at that. Certainly there's a lot of information there for you to do what you will with, but I just think that it's a really great resource funded by the National Department of Education, as well as the National Department of Labor in some areas, to do that work. The second, and again, I'm sharing this because oftentimes as professionals, we're not asked for our opinions. And so here is a place where we can add some opinions, especially for those of you that are in the space of teaching social studies or teaching high school equivalency preparatory social studies curriculum history materials. There is a comment period from the Michigan Department of Education as they revamp the teacher requirements for social studies. I believe that's certification, is it an RX or something like that for teacher certification? But there is a deadline for that to give comments and feedbacks to. So if you are in a position or that is a space that you feel very passionate about, or that you could lend some expertise to, there's an opportunity for you to respond to that comment period, look at the recommendations or the changes that they have made. Much of that has to do with the course content that would be taught at the teacher preparation programs at a public university or a teacher prep program. So please do that if that's something that you're interested in and following up on. And I would just say, especially in the alternative and adult education landscapes, our voices are not always included in that target group. So please take a moment if you can to comment on that. Also, I wanted to share our partners at, oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
On your PowerPoint, when you have the links, is that on the PowerPoint that you emailed us? Because if we can't connect to the link on this when you're presenting.
Yep. So when we'll email it out, it'll have the hyperlink. So it'll be a PDF. And so when you get it, you should be able to click right on it and it will take you to the resources that I'm mentioning. Thanks, Robin. I wanted to also share that our partners at MACAE, the Michigan Alternative Education Organization, they are hosting their annual spring conference, April 26th through 28th. I think it's up in Traverse City. And so we're excited. I think we'll be planning to attend and just want to promote that out to all of our partners in the alternative education landscape as we go forward. And then lastly, and again, highlighting a project that is through the Department of Education, but I'd really love to see alternative and adult education educators highlighted, is that they are going to be putting together a video project for Michigan Teacher Appreciation Month. And they're going to be collecting videos from students, administrators, community members, the Department of Education is, to highlight and to thank teachers for their contributions. So I've included the link here. It tells you the specific directions on what to do. There's a Michigan Teacher Appreciation webpage, where to send the information, how to upload something. So the deadline would be Friday, March 24th. So lots of time if you're in a position to share about a colleague or more than one colleague, or ask students, if you're an administrator, ask students to comment on teachers. We really want to thank them for their contributions to the Michigan education landscape. So maybe something that you want to look into and be a part of. And even if you choose not to elect or move forward with electing to send a video, I just think it's kind of a cool idea to do anyway, just to thank in some way. Maybe it's not a video, maybe it's a card, those things go really a long mile and a long way to thank our educators that are making a difference every day. So wanted to share that resource. Any questions about these resources? All right, we will move to the adult education and integrated education and training resources and information. There's kind of three, again, this month, there's not a lot of action, I would say, but more of kind of high level reports and resource information that has come out. And so over the next few weeks, as Robin was asking when we send this out, you'll have the links here to kind of synthesize and study more deeply some of these resources that I'm sharing. But one of the more actionable items would be to attend a webinar that's hosted this Friday, actually, by the United States Customs and Immigration Services. They are hosting a webinar on the potential redesign of the naturalization of the citizenship test. So I've included the link for registration there. If you've been in this landscape, you know that this is a very, what do I want to say? Complicated process, or complicated history, I should say, of the test redesign. The test of the citizenship test throughout its history has been modified, updated, verified. At certain points, it has been politicized. My understanding is that at this point, this is not a political, incentivization by either political party to sway or move the citizenship test. But I think as educators and those that work most readily with immigrants and those applying for citizenship, it would be good to have feedback and commentary from you all on that process nationally and what that looks like, what that process looks like, the types of questions that are asked, the types of materials that are available then to help learners or immigrants potentially get ready for or prepare for that test. So it's a good opportunity to be there. It's an hour webinar, and I've included the registration link when this comes out as well. And then there are two, one is a report and one is a request for feedback. So the first is a report, again, and it touches upon, but it's kind of a more broad report around the Federal Communications Commission has completed a work study group on essentially the impact of the needs in order to as it relates to communication tools, strategies, investments to have a highly capable workforce. And that's very highfalutin talk for essentially digital literacy. What do we need and what tools nationally do we have in place, both for digital literacy, but also the technology infrastructure, high-speed internet, et cetera, to make a workforce of the 21st century. So I've included the link to that report. Again, it's very dense, but there are certain sections that they have recommended as it relates to investment areas. I think the ones most readily for us, like I just mentioned, would be really key recommendations to the National Congress around investments in high-speed internet capabilities, investments in technology resources, broadband internet access, but also accessibility to the K-12 children of the K-12 system to have stable internet, stable functioning internet, hotspots if they need to. And then as it relates to the adult learner landscape, really a standardized digital literacy platform or digital literacy skills that then are transferable into other aspects of an adult learner's life, whether that's education or employment or training of some sort. So kind of high level, there's some little data pieces in there. I know there are many of you that like to synthesize those things and read those things. And I I too like to glance at them, but if you are looking for some good nighttime reading, that might be a good place to start. So, and then the last one is actually a request for information. This is, and I'll just open it so you can see it. This is a commentary that's open. Something like this may look very familiar to you, but essentially the Department of Labor at the national level is opening on a comment period in response to sector strategies to meet critical workforce needs. So essentially, they're asking for really educational professionals, workforce professionals, industry sector employers, whether that's healthcare or construction or business, et cetera, to really give commentaries on what are the best strategies to really meet the talent shortage that we're facing in the country. And so again, this is a space for us to leverage our knowledge. These comment periods, what's interesting is that oftentimes these, even though they're national, these commentaries, when you go back and look at them, many people do not comment. And so I know that most recently when we commented on one, there was like 15 comments nationally. And we were like the 15th one to submit. And so these comments are evaluated. It's a part of our really, I think, responsible citizenry to respond. Again, it does take a little bit of time because you have to kind of read through and evaluate, but MACAE will be synthesizing and promoting our own commentary on this piece, but I wanted to offer it up to you, many of you who work more intimately in those spaces of talent cultivation, of skills readiness. I'm really kind of thinking about what do we need to have in place nationally to make a system that both an education approach, a business approach, a workforce development approach, a K-12 preparation approach to meet the demands that we have of a talent shortage in not only in our state, but for this particular case nationally. So something to think about and an opportunity for us to share our Michigan voices out. Any questions on any of those resources? Okay. The other thing I wanted to share is that in response to the recently announced investments for adult education funding in the state, especially as we work through this legislative process. So really, we should be saying that this process is still ongoing, but we're in a good position. I feel very positive that a lot of these investments will be solidified and we'll be able to move forward. And so to that end, we are announcing that we will be launching a statewide investments work group. We'll be doing this in collaboration with the State Office of Adult Education, the regional fiscal agents, but MACAE is really going to be taking the lead on this to really analyze and synthesize if we are to see a funding increase in adult education funding, where can those resources and investments, where can we make recommendations or suggestions to you all at the program level of best places to channel those resources so that we can have a uniformity and some really baseline quality program indicators across the state. Many of us already know where additional resources would be helpful, but I've also heard from many members, that they would like to see what are some best practices that other statewide entities or agencies are using or leveraging dollars now. And so how could they replicate that, or how could they build upon that success? So these recommendations will really be a tool. They will not necessarily be a requirement, but they will be a broad outline of where can we invest and where should we be thinking about these investments as we look at national trends, statewide trends. We look at the intentionality of where our learners are and where we would like them to go. And also I see it as a tool to help some of our local leadership that really does also influence our programs. So for an example is a school district superintendent or chief financial officer or a nonprofit entity executive officer, those individuals that are a part of our planning processes, but maybe are not engaged on the day-to-day with our program enough to know what investments might make most sense. And so we feel strongly as an association that we have an obligation really to help communicate that messaging, to help facilitate those conversations. And this is the first part of us to be able to do that. So our intent is to survey and allow an opportunity for everyone to have a stake and a voice in that. But also there will be an opportunity for a smaller group to really graph out all of those comments and really drill down a few key bullet points and just then obviously share that out. So again, not to get ahead of ourselves, but we really feel like this is a part of the landscape and process as we talk about future investments, future dollars, future resources coming into this space. We want to make sure that we're leveraging those and using them responsibly and equitably. So that is something that we're committed to. It's very exciting work. It's very daunting work at the same time as well. But I'm hopeful that we'll be able to come together. And when I say that we are going to be moving on this, it will be moving, within the next few weeks to as we go through the legislative process and get a better understanding of where things are there, we will transition right into this process and begin that. And then have a producible, at least first round of recommendations. I would also anticipate that those things would evolve over time, but I would anticipate something obviously by the end of June, early July, because that's when programming starts. And that's when we could see the first bit of investment change for many of our programs. So more to come on that, more specificity on what that looks like, how we will be engaging you all. But it's something that I think is really important for us to all be at the table at and have some say in that direction. I see Whitney has her hand up. Go ahead, Whitney.
This might be something that I should already know, but can you talk a little bit about the timeline? I know that people are meeting next week. And then I know there are people that can't go next week. Can you talk about how they can help sorry, oh my goodness. I'm driving to Alpena and somebody was just passing right into me.
Oh no, well, be safe.
Yeah, I should probably not be talking.
Be safe in your mobile office, Whitney. Yes, I can talk through that. So
thank you.
Backing up a little bit. So each year in the legislative process, MACAE has asked for its recommendations, usually in the fall time. And by that, I mean September or October, legislative or executive recommendations, I should say. And that, even though it's in that September and fall, I'll just give the example of 2022. It's for the budget that goes into effect in 2023 to 2024. So these conversations start a year out at the very least. And then through those intervening months, there's more ongoing conversation or clarity around what those requests are. There's conversations about kind of, where does the legislator stand in different ways. This year was very unique, obviously, because we had the election. And so the people that were in power in November are not in power as we turn into the new year. The key kind of trajectory of where state government was going has shifted slightly as well, because the legislature that was focused in one area is not there now. And then now the new legislature has different focus. So as we came into the new year, the governor released her executive budget in January. She late January, early February, she kind of cemented that with her State of the State address. And then now we're in this period of what happens where the legislature takes that budget apart and analyzes it at all of the different committees that they have. So each committee within the House and the Senate in Michigan takes that relative component to them, the funding that's there, the policy changes and recommendations. They review those. They ask for clarity on why that recommendation was there. In many cases, they'll hold hearings on the importance or significance of those investments. In some cases, they'll also prepare or articulate that they will want to make a different recommendation. Different doesn't mean bad or better. It means just different. It could be different funding amount. It could be different outlay of how those programs are delivered. It could be a different, a less funding amount. What's different this time is that the Democrats control the House and the Senate as well as the governor's office. So you'd like to think that maybe they've had those communications have been on track. So those conversations will happen throughout the month of March into the month of April, and then a culminating or cementing of everything will happen in early May. And that is when the next revenue consensus estimating conference is. And essentially that's a big thing that happens where they look and evaluate what revenue has come into the state. And so as we've announced that we want to plan for these investments, do we ultimately have enough money to cover these investments? So in early May, we could anticipate that the legislature will they will release their own budgets, each the House and the Senate. Oftentimes, they will look very similar to the governor's budget. Oftentimes, they'll also look different. And so then in early May, once they release their budgets, there will be either a conference committee that comes together to kind of reconcile all of the different budgets from the Senate, from the House, from the executive office, and then propose that those be put into bills and voted on by the legislature towards the end of May, if not early June. And the intent is usually that at least for all of the state budget, that's passed by June. I mean, that's something that our legislators like to say so that they can go home for the 4th of July holiday recess or the summer recess and tout that at all the parades and all the barbecues and everything else, that we've done our work and we're back in our local communities. So what's significant too about adult education and some of our other alternative and community ed funding opportunities is that they also, if they can't pass the entire state budget, they'll try to pass just the School Aid Act, which is the funding for schools, because schools start, we all know, July 1 for their funding year. So the outlook is we're in this process in March and April where we have an opportunity now to echo what we see in the executive budget to our policymakers. So if you aren't able to attend next week, you have, the next few weeks into the next month to send an email, to have a conversation with them, phone call, coffee conversation, and really articulate what we have been is that we support what those recommendations are in the executive office. We would take it a step further, and I think those of us that are attending, we can go in those details a little later today, but that's really what our objective is for the next 4 to 6 weeks. And then beyond that, it gets a little more technical, and then the House and Senate will release their budgets in that late April, early May timeframe as that state revenue estimating conference is convened as well. So that was a long, convoluted thing. So I hope it made sense, but it really is a multiple phase process over a year. And there's always an avenue, an opportunity to be engaged with this process. And so we just think that this March timeframe is a good kickoff, because many of these committees and many of our policymakers are for the very first time looking at the state budget, because it's been out for a few weeks now, but they haven't really had a chance to drill into it and to look at it. So this is kind of the kickstart as their committees look at all of them and review them, that, it's easier to say, don't even mess with this, we support it. And then, they pass it on to the next and it goes down the line. So I hope that answered your question, Whitney.
Yes, thank you.
One other thing that I wanted to share as well is, and it's been a little under the radar, we did send it out. So hopefully if you saw it, you were able to sign up. And if you have not, there's still time. But tomorrow we are hosting a webinar on the Michigan Achievement Scholarship. This is in collaboration with the Michigan College Access Network, the Department of Leo, and the Michigan Department of Treasury, their student aid and financial aid team. And so if you remember, the Michigan Achievement Scholarship is a scholarship that's made available in an award amount for beginning with the graduating class of 2023. And it includes adult learners within that landscape, those that have graduated with a diploma or that have, or I should say, have or will be graduating in this school year with a diploma or an equivalency. And so it's a scholarship opportunity that allows them to go to a community or 2 or 4 year institution and apply that towards a training credential or towards enrollment in a 4-year or 2-year degree. So it's an awesome opportunity. It's something that our adult learners, we know that this is one of the hardest transitions for them once they get those credentials and then transition to post-secondary. So this webinar will kind of review the eligibility requirements. We'll talk about the specific award amounts. We'll talk about supporting what maintains that student's eligibility and the qualifying services for them. I'm excited because the College Access Network has been really, really open and intentional about writing and including adult learners in this verbiage and language because of our ongoing dialogue. And so this is meant to be a resource for you all, probably the first of many. I mean, it's going to take a while for us to all get this down and understand how it works, lessons learned from Futures for Frontliners and Michigan Reconnect. But this is a really important opportunity for us to learn more about it, what it means. So I am excited. It will be recorded. So if you can attend, it'll be recorded and we'll certainly share that out at a later date as well. But excited to host that and to be a part of that landscape and ultimately have the knowledge and experience to be able to refer our adult learners to that scholarship program and to see them, be able to transition to those opportunities and not have to seek additional financial aid support because they'll have that foundational support that has never been available to them or historically has not been able, not been able to historically access that. So very excited about that. So make sure that you sign up for that. When we send out the recording again and the link, it will include the link as well as more information to the Achievement Scholarship webinar. So really, really excited that they included adult learning in this scholarship opportunity. And I personally resonate with this because when I was my first year as a freshman in college, if you remember, I don't even remember what the scholarship opportunity was. I think it was the Michigan, I don't even know what it was called at this point, but if you recall, the legislature stopped funding it and they stopped funding it. Like we just talked about, the new budget year started in October. And so there were many individuals that lost funding or scholarship because the state decided not to fund that. So I know that personally, my family had to, pay several $1,000s. There were hundreds of students, if not thousands, across the state that had to drop out because they were suddenly billed, for something that they weren't expecting. This is not like that. This is a reinstatement of those and really a commitment to providing those resources to families. And the eligibility is very strong so that people that need it are going to be able to be eligible for it. I also wanted to share that we are moving into the second phase of our project with the Michigan Rehabilitation Services, MRS. This is a working project that's been ongoing for about a year now. If you remember the first phase, about a year ago, we had launched some kind of key project areas that we wanted to work with them. And one of them was to share direct contact information so that we can break through the cycle of reaching out to a 1-800 number or reaching out to a generic email and not getting direct support for providers on the adult education side, but also on the MRS side, as they are referring clients to adult education and vice versa. So we moved in, the first phase was that we gathered all of the lead contact information from all of our members, all of our adult education providers. So thank you to all of you that responded to that. You may not have remembered that you responded to that, but we cataloged and collected and updated and maintained that information. And we've shared that directly with the MRS agencies so that they have the direct lead contact of someone at your program. So if they have a client or they have someone that they need for those services, they have your contact information. In the second phase of this project, we convened a small work group team to come together to really look at some common verbiage, some common components and strategies for an intake process that could be shared across adult education and MRS. This is not meant to necessarily take the place of those things that may already be in place. We know that certain communities and certain regions have already dedicated time to doing that, but it's not consistent across the state. And so part of the strategy is to say, how can we make really the intent of the group, and what all of us together felt very strongly about, was reducing barriers in bureaucracy, paperwork, as it relates to learners, and helping them get the resources that they need. So it doesn't make sense for someone to enter into one of our programs and complete the adult learner plan and then transition to the MRS and have to start the demographic and intake process all over again. Is there a common referral or data sharing that we can have? So we've kind of drafted and reviewed what some of those components would be. We're in the process of redrafting what that could look like, sharing that with the Department of Leo. I don't want to say that it's ready to go for air prime time, but we're moving through in the process. And then in the second phase, we have just also been shared, and we will share this out probably this week, if not early next week. We will be sharing with all of our adult education providers, all of our members in our membership, the identified lead contact at the local MRS agency. So what MRS has done is catalog who is going to be able to respond to the questions that we most get from an adult education provider. Historically, the referral process has been to call a number and have it be dispatched, or to call or to email something. As we went through our process to be more intentional about identifying a lead contact, they have done the same on their side. And so the intent is that we kind of break down some of those walls. And so this contact list, this email list, will be shared out with all of our adult ed members. And so you'll have that direct contact list. So please share that for your local area or your local region among your staff as a resource that you can use readily. So our next steps is sharing that information out, and then again, working on continuing to draft what we're calling the common intake. Again, and what that will look like, reconvening our small group and moving that process forward. And my hope is in the next few months, we'll be able to report back on where those things stand. And there's a lot of general approval within state government and the bureaucratic powers that be about how this actually could be very beneficial to all of our learners, especially our learners and clients that are enrolled in multiple services or need potentially multiple services across different services, but also across different WIOA titles. So I'm excited about this. I want to thank those that have gathered in this small work group for their time and their expertise, and look for that lead contact form or essentially information list to go out, and please identify who your MRS lead contacts are from that list and print that, post it somewhere so that your team knows who you should be calling in your local area for MRS needs and services and questions. So any questions about these updates? All right, as we come to the end of our time, I just want to remind you, if you haven't had the opportunity, please sign up to join us for at the Capitol next Wednesday for our Advocacy and Education Day. We've got a really great day scheduled. This afternoon, if you are signed up, you should have received information about a brief webinar. We'll keep it brief, just reviewing kind of the essential components of the day, a little reminder of parking and those kinds of things. And then on the day of, we'll spend a little bit of time in the morning kind of reviewing our talking points, hearing from a couple of different lawmakers, as well as some of our policy partners on the current landscape, and then have the opportunity to actually visit with our lawmakers, see them in session. And I am excited about it. And this is, a big event, and it's something that MACAE, because of the pandemic, we haven't done in person in a while either. So it'll be nice. Please, have your smile on, because we'll take lots of pictures for sure. So if you need more, if you have any more questions or need any more information, please reach out. I'm always happy to answer those questions or comments. And then the last thing, yes, Umberto, that's wonderful. And I will be in contact with you because that's great. Yes, you're more than welcome to bring learners and students to the event. That's wonderful. A couple of programs have asked about the possibility of that. Absolutely. So here, I just wanted to leave you with some reminders and some dates. Again, the recording as well as this PowerPoint will go out to you in the next few hours. But something to also keep on your radar that's new is that on Wednesday, April 12th, we will be having a virtual professional development with the Barbara Bush Foundation. That will be a train the trainer model professional development for any entity or agency that works with volunteers, whether that's in a volunteer leadership capacity or volunteer tutor capacity. And they will be doing a training with their toolkit. I think it's going to be very valuable. It's the first of a couple of different events that we're doing with the Barbara Bush Foundation. And anyone and everyone is welcome that works in that landscape. So more information to come, but that is a new thing that I just want to have people over the next few weeks, as there's lots of things happening. Please just kind of pencil that in on your calendar for April 12th. And more information, registration, etc., will be upcoming for that. And then our Virtual Spring Institute, we're finalizing the agenda for that. That information will go out very soon about the sessions and how to register for the Virtual Spring Institute on May 11th and 12th. So lots of good end of the year opportunities for getting that last bit of learning in as we go forward. So I will leave it there. We hope you have a wonderful month. We hope that spring is here or on its way, I should say, and that you have a wonderful spring and a wonderful time. We will be back in early April for our next membership check-in, but as always, you can always reach out to us if you've got questions, comments, or concerns. I'll hang on for a little while longer, but we'll stop the recording and just say thank you, everybody, for your time today. And we look forward to our next opportunity to gather together. So thank you, everybody. Take care. And if I don't see you, have a wonderful rest of your day.